What's up Top 10 fam? Hope you're having an awesome day. I'm your host Eamon Hassan and welcome back to another video. I'm a huge bookworm and proud. Honestly, I've always loved reading. I even got the most books read award in primary school, knowing one day I'd be able to flex that fact and stunt on all these hoes. And that's what I'm doing right now. But books aside, if you like an author, you'll probably like most books they write. I'm pretty sure I've read every Roald Dahl, Jacqueline Wilson book ever written. Even when I read The Fault in Our Stars, I loved it so much I read like 5 John Green books after that. But what if there is no notable author in the equation? These are the top 10 scary mysterious books with no authors. Starting us off with number 10 is the Incest Diary. I told you guys it can appear in any video, always be prepared for it. Published in 1999, the book goes into excruciating detail about a girl's incestuous relationship with her dad. The abuse began when she was 14 and lasted till her late 20s. Wow. The woman even tried going to the police to file charges against her dad, but the officer said it had been too long and that she should just write her story down. Justice, the police, it's nothing, he said. And so she did. She wrote a book. The book goes from flashbacks to her childhood to adulthood. It has her inner monologues that contradict themselves constantly. Her manic fixations are clear in the book, and she goes into detail about how it informed every single thing she ever did, how she sought the abuse and reenacted it in other relationships, how if anything she started craving the abuse. The book sold more than 70,000 copies in France in the first 3 months after its release. I mean, it's dark, it's graphic, and it's anonymous. Coming in at number 9 is A Woman in Berlin. This one came out in English in 1954 and it's said to be memoirs of an anonymous German woman. It covers April to June 1945 when the Red Army occupied Berlin. The woman is a journalist and she goes on to describe really dark subject matter like getting gang raped by Russian soldiers and trying to survive in the situation by dating a Soviet officer and how other girls had to make similar decisions. Women literally had no protection from anyone at that time, so it really was eat or be eaten. When it was first published in Germany, it was met with a lot of disgust since it was just too soon to talk about the German suffering, but 2 years after Hitler died, the book was republished and it was on the bestsellers list for more than 20 weeks. The author was actually revealed in 2003 posthumously by Jens Bisky, a literary editor. She identified the author to be Marta Hillers, and Marta's publisher was absolutely livid at the invasion of privacy that had caused. I don't get why people can't just let other people remain anonymous. Like, can everyone just live their lives and stop interfering in other people's lives? That'd be great. At number 8 we have Go Ask Alice. Now this book was published anonymously in 1971 and it revolves around the diary of a girl who gets addicted to drugs at 15 and then runs away from home. It's funny, when I saw this book in a bookshop a few years ago I really wanted to read it, but I had way too many unread books at the time on my shelf, so I didn't get it, but it's ironic, it's popped up into my life once again. But anyway, the book follows this girl as she goes through heartbreak, intense drug use, rape, body image, social acceptance, etc. It's sort of a coming of age story if anything, but laser focused on drugs. She basically moves city due to her dad's job and goes home one summer to stay with her grandparents. She attends a party, she tries a drink laced with LSD unknowingly, and so begins the journey of drugs. If you're interested in the title of the book, it's actually referencing a song called White Rabbit, which is alluding to Alice in Wonderland. Alice eats and drinks a bunch of things that change her size, so they're kind of linking that to a drug experience, but there is a twist and it's not the book's ending. Controversy sparked in the 70s because of Beatrice Sparks and people thinking she was the author of the book. She was initially credited as the editor, but then records showed she was the sole author, and then apparently it was the diary of a deceased teenager. I mean, it's really all over the place, but the book does look amazing but also scarily real. Filling our number 7 slot is Diary of an Oxygen Thief, and I've heard of this one too, and the title alone is just hilarious. Aren't we all just low-key oxygen thieves? Rudy. Either way, published in 2006, the book is a Dutch novel also written in the style of a memoir. That's 4 books in a row now that have been memoirs and anonymous. Honestly, people want to reveal their dirty secrets but not want to reveal themselves. It is what it is, guys. Either way, the book is about an Irish man who is an alcoholic and who takes pleasure in emotionally abusing women. What a catch. The man regrets his past relationships as the book goes on, and as he changes jobs, he moves to the US where culture shock happens, addiction and paranoia happens, love happens, everything just goes down, and the book isn't even that long. Self-deprecating humor is the book's forte. I mean, oxygen thief. The narrator doesn't even think he's worth the air he breathes, so I mean, is he or isn't he? Guess we'll have to read it to find out. Now at number 6 is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and the plot of this low-key sounds really good, like it could be the next historical film starring Saoirse Ronan for sure. Published sometime in the 14th century, the novel, if you couldn't tell from the Arthurian title, is a Middle English chivalric romance. The plot is actually lit, you guys. It follows Sir Gawain, one of King Arthur's knights, who basically agrees to a challenge from a mysterious Green Knight. The challenge is for any knight to cut the Green Knight with his axe, and he then gets to axe the knight back 1 year and 1 day later. Sir Gawain beheads the dude and he picks up his head and then reminds him he'll be back on the scheduled date. And so starts the story of Gawain trying to stay loyal and chivalrous and courageous about the agreement and the trials and tribulations along with that. Basically, hero goes on quest and gets tested. End plot. That's like Dungeons and Dragons right there. The book itself is written in stanzas and each one ends in a rhyme, so I know it may be a bit hard to read, but for those who are willing, do you. Coming in at number 5 is Might is Right, and this one is definitely gonna anger all our feminists out there, so here's to hoping this seems problematic to everyone watching, hopefully, fingers crossed. Published in 1890, this non-fiction book is a lot to take in. It focuses mostly on social Darwinism, which applies natural selection and the whole survival of the fittest science to human society and politics. He emphasizes how humans are motivated by our own selfish wants, and we base our decisions on the consequences of them rather than if they're morally right or not. He claims only physical strength can lead to moral right and actively bashes democracy and Christianity. He says BS like weakness should be viewed with hatred and that women and families are the property of men since they are more superior. It was even dubbed as proto-fascist white power manifesto, which I'm inclined to agree with. The author went by the pseudonym Ragnar Redbeard, so that's clearly not a real name, but interestingly enough, a white supremacist publisher and the Church of Satan founder both think Jack London wrote the book, and if he didn't, that's a really brutal accusation by some pretty questionable people. At number 4 is the Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man. What a title. The title itself literally had me. I was like, ex-colored man, what does that even mean? Order on Amazon right now. But anyway, published in 1912, the book is a fictional account of a biracial man whose name we never find out since he's always just called the ex-colored man. The story follows his life living in America at the end of the 19th century when things like lynchings were very much still happening. His dream is to glorify black people through ragtime music, but after seeing the way society worked, he started passing as white to make his life easier and safer. He forms a friendship with a character called the Rich White Gentleman, and despite being a free man, there were aspects of slave-master dynamics within this relationship. It was originally published anonymously since the author was a diplomat and wasn't sure how controversial the book could be since issues of race and discrimination weren't really discussed in books back then. When it was republished 15 years later and it did moderately well, the author decided to be credited, and so the book's anonymity died in 1927. James Weldon Johnson is the man of the hour, and if you don't know what that means, that just means he's the author. Filling our number 3 slot is Lazarillo de Tormes. Now this one is actually a Spanish novella that was first published in 1554, probably the oldest book on this list, no doubt. The author chose to remain anonymous because of all the anti-clerical content, and the author was living in Spain. I'm sure he had beef with religious authority, interfering in political matters, and wanted to publicize it but also not get hung for it, so fair enough. The book followed an impoverished boy called Lazaro who goes from master to master. He gets more cunning and smart as he changes masters while simultaneously trying to take over his father's practice. The reason this book is so high up on the list is because it's sort of iconic in many ways. It was credited with inventing the picaresque genre, which basically means the adventures of a slightly rogue hero of lower class who uses his wits to survive in a corrupt society. Unsurprisingly enough, the book got banned by the Spanish crown for dissing the Catholic Church and all aristocracy, and only got unbanned in the 19th century. Now at number 2 is Frankenstein. I know, Mary Shelley, we know she wrote it, don't come for me. She started writing it at 18 and published it at 20. Can you imagine publishing one of the most renowned pieces of gothic fiction at the age of 20? What were we doing at 20? Freaking twiddling our thumbs and playing Temple Run on our iPads probably. Oh, that's what I was doing at 20. Actually, no it wasn't. Cut that out, editor. When it was originally published in 1818, it was done so anonymously for many reasons probably. I mean, she was 20 for one, who's gonna take a 20-year-old seriously? Her dad was a very famous author, so maybe it was also the pressure of living up to that she didn't want, or maybe if it didn't do well, she just didn't want anything to do with it. Many actually thought her husband Percy wrote it since he's the one who wrote the introduction for it. When its second edition was published in 1823, that's actually when she appeared as the author. The novel was met with great success, which let the family move to Italy and get lit really. Actually, no it wasn't lit, her life was very tragic, but yeah, here's to Mary Shelley. And finally, at number 1 is novel with cocaine or cocaine romance. This one weirdly caught my attention because it's so vague. I was trying to gather as much info about it as I could, but it was actually quite hard. Published in 1934, it's a Russian psychological novel which explores ideology, and I mean it was Russian, communism ideology was important at the time. It explores philosophy and psychology all through the veil of a teen's cocaine addiction. We follow Vadim through school, his experiences with women, what his life is like, what he thinks of everything pre-cocaine, and then obviously after. When it was published, the author was M. Agiev, and that's meant to be the pseudonym for Russian author Mark Levi, but this has never been confirmed, and so it still remains anonymous to this day. And that's it for today's video, guys. There's honestly a lot of books on this list I'd read. I mean, I've read Frankenstein already, but all the memoirs at the start of the video sounded interesting as hell, so low-key very tempted. Let me know which books you'd want to read from the list in the comments below, and as always guys, I'm your host Eamon Hassan, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!